Hey lighting people! GrandMA3 version 2.4 has been out for several weeks now, and I have something to talk about. We are going to go more in depth on phasers. We're going to talk about how to create shapes and what they're useful for. And most importantly, we're going to be talking about the differences between the old method of creating phasers and the new method of doing recipe phasers, and why it matters and how it's going to affect workflow. We got a whole bunch of new features, right? If you saw my other video on the updates or if you've seen other news about it, we have the ability to do phasers and recipes. But secondly, we have within that, we have shapes, we have InShot, and we have direction. And we have adaptive width and adaptive measure. All of that is really cool, but most of those new features aren't available if you try to program phasers the old way. So why would you want to program phasers the old way? The reason is primarily because you can't do Speedmaster in recipe phasers, which is really annoying because I put my Speedmaster in my phasers. I like to have my phasers tied to different Speedmasters based on the attribute and put in the queues and controlled that way. The problem is, if you want to connect your phasers to Speedmasters, now you have to either attach the Speedmaster to the sequence or to the queue. Now, that is a queue part setting, so technically you can create different queue parts with different attributes and have a Speedmaster in each one. That's a lot more time consuming for programming, and it's not the workflow that I'm used to. I always put everything in part 0, so I don't like this method and I'm not going to be using it. What that means is my options right now are don't use Speedmasters or create my phasers the old way. One thing I do want to address is I know some people have said, oh, just add the Speedmaster in the programmer. The fact of the matter is that does not store it as a recipe value, so it stores this separate Speedmaster, but it's not connected to the phaser recipe. So that is a little bit wonky. It's messy as far as the programming side goes, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. The problem, as I was saying, with creating phasers the old way, now that these new features have been introduced, is we are lacking the ability to use shapes, direction, or adaptive width and measure in the old way of creating phasers. But the bottom line is this gives us a little bit of a conundrum. Which method do we use? When? Why? And what is a sensible workflow with the new phaser recipes? Before we do any of that, I do want to show you how the shapes work. So we're going to come over here and we're going to open up a shape object in our shapes pool. Shapes is simply a new pool like any other pool. We have a whole bunch of predefined ones. They're locked by default, but you can also unlock them if you like and edit them. But I've created one right here that we're going to take a look at, and I am going to delete it so that we can start afresh. We have here an empty shape. Now what do you do with that? The answer is you can put data in here that's basically going to act as a template whenever you go and create a phaser. So whatever data you put in here is all going to autofill into the phaser. You can create a phaser without it. You don't have to use a shape. But this is going to make creating phasers so much easier. So we'll choose our attribute. We'll choose a value and another value. So this is step 1. Step 2, you can add more steps if you want. We're going to change the curve. This is going to give us a sine wave, and you have transition, accel, and decel autofilled by this. That's the same as it's been all this time. You can also change the width of each step if you would like, and you can change the speed of the phaser. You can change the measure, and you can add these adaptive measure, adaptive width, and adaptive XY rotation settings if you would like. Basically, what those are doing is these are going to change how your phaser is behaving based on your selection, and that's going to be based on the selection grid. So this adaptive XY rotation is going to determine how those values are being applied. 0 is going to go straight across the x-axis. You could have it be up and down or any diagonal of the XY rotation. And what it's going to do is whatever, based on that setting, let's just say it's left to right, adaptive measure is going to set your measure to the number of x spaces that are occupied. Adaptive width is going to set your width to a division of that same however many spaces are occupied. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it so that you are seeing basically a chase from left to right based on whatever your X selection is. So if you have like fixtures here and here, they'll light up at the same time, but you create a chase across the X-axis. And that is amazing because otherwise it's a lot more work to make a chase. In this case, you can create a template and you can apply it to any selection. That's awesome. Also, with making a shape, you can leave as many of these fields as you like blank. You don't have to give them values. This is just going to apply the data that you give it. We also have a 1D view, which will let us change these values. You can use handles to change the XL and D cell. You can do everything in here. In fact, you can even use the slider feature on this, which I think is amazing. And you can change your absolute values, your relative values with transition, all in this view. You can add steps. Right now we're seeing 2 and 3 here. We can change that to 1 and 2. Well, a minute ago it was letting me, yes, 1 and 3. So you can see whichever selection of steps you would like, but you can always only see one step at a time. And I don't know why this is being weird, but whatever. So that's how that works. You can also add attributes here. Now we have 2. We can select which ones we're going to be looking at. Whichever one is toggled on is the one you're going to be editing if you make changes down here. If you have multiple selected, you'll be changing both of them. That's why these are showing a range. And you can also, I'm going to select this one, remove it. Now we only have dimmer left. And I'm going to remove this step. So as you can see, you can do everything in either version of the editor. To add another attribute here, you would just insert a new value source. And then here we go, value source 1 and value source 2. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. And now we can take this shape that we've created however we want, and we can use it as a template to create a phaser. So let's go over here, and in my recipe editor, I'm going to simply add a phaser recipe. It highlights the selection box by default, and I can choose a group here. It's gonna, in this context area, which I'll talk more about in a minute, you have a sheet or pool view, and it'll automatically show you groups because you have selection highlighted. Just select one and then it puts it in here. Then you can go into shape and you can either do this manually or you can select an object here. I'm going to select this one, and then as you can see, we have put in some default values here. I did not realize I somehow changed what my values were in here, so now this is not doing what I thought it was doing. But it doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to show you what's going on. You can also change these. Once you apply the shape, you can change it from the default values. And if you've done your shape properly, and your shape is giving you all of the data that you need, you don't have to change anything here besides you choose your selection, you choose your shape, and then you choose a matrix. So we can go over here, and now we can select an MAtricks pool object, or we can just add our matrix here. And so what it really does is it makes this process of creating a phaser as simple as 1, 2, 3. So you create your template shape, and then you have group, shape, and a matrix. And of course your matrix, you can also create a matrix in your MAtricks pool. And so this can be like literally so fast. I love the context menu. Now, one thing to be aware of is edit recipe doesn't work with creating phaser recipes, but the context area makes it so easy nonetheless that honestly, I don't even think I would ever miss it. Once you have your matrix added, the only other thing that you might want to do that we don't have inside of the shapes is the InShot and direction. And what both of those do is the InShot determines how many times your phaser will run before turning off. So you can set it to 1, for instance, or you can set it to half, and then it will run only the first step. You can do a 4-step phaser, set it to 0.75. Like, it will do whatever percentage or multiplication of your phaser that you want, and then it will turn off. Direction can be forward, backward, or alternate. This is a way that you can make a bounce. And I think I mentioned this before, but InShot does exist in the old way of creating phasers. Direction and the adaptives do not. Okay, now we've created a great phaser recipe, but Let's talk a little bit more about the context area because that is new in this version. So if you're missing it, you can click up here and you can click context area and that will show it. Action buttons shows or hides those buttons over there. And this is super helpful, like I said. One thing I do not like about the recipe editor is that it takes up so much space. I wish they would just make everything a little bit smaller or give you the option to like make it smaller, because to see the whole thing, you basically need a full screen recipe editor. That's a bit frustrating because like I have limited screen space. I don't have space to have a recipe editor take up my whole screen. But all of that being said, what I can do is increase the size of this, and then I can show you a little bit more of this. So we have, I told you this before, but under selection, we can see our groups and we can see a sheet view as well. We have, if we select shape, we can see that. We can also pull up the editor and we can edit it here. And if you were working with values, whether this is in the standard recipes or here, because you can do custom values in Phaser recipes, but you can also use presets. It'll pull up all of your preset pools and you can click around to whichever one you want. And then if you click on MAtricks, you get your MAtricks view and you can change it in the editor, you can change it in the pool, you can select an item from the sheet view. And then of course we have these action buttons over here: add programmer part, add standard recipe, add Phaser recipe. You can insert a step this way. You can also insert things here, but these are so fast and easy. Then you can also add a value source. You can click adjust shape to pull up this section of the context area, or this one will pull up MAtricks. And like I said, there's a reason why these buttons are so amazing, because if we just come in here and we do new recipe, we have to choose if we want a standard or a Phaser recipe. So this just makes it a little bit faster, and I do use these buttons quite a lot. Alright, we've talked about how the new Phaser recipes work. The other phasers work pretty much the same way that they always have. I mean, it's pretty simple. We just have an extra thing here, which is InShot, and then everything else is the same. Even the Phaser editor. Of course, it's not really showing me anything because I don't have any values in here, but this is kind of a lot more work because you have to click back and forth and all of that stuff, but the Phaser editor is pretty much the same as it was. We still have forms. We still don't have shapes. So, be that as it may, that exists. It's the same as it was. I made whole videos on how the Phaser editor works and how to create phasers, so you can definitely go watch those. They still apply. You can still do it all that way. It's all great. But now that we've talked about how all of that stuff works, let's address workflow with Phaser recipes. I don't like using Phaser recipes directly in queues, and you can make up your own mind about this, but personally, I don't think I'm going to do that at all. I did do it when I was first experimenting with them, and I found all the reasons why you should never do that. So from now on, I'm going to be storing my Phaser recipes just like regular recipes in presets, and then selecting those presets as my values for my standard recipes that go in queues. Only standard recipes go in queues. Let me show you why. So I've created a queue over here, and you can see based on the purple pot and the green pot that we have both a Phaser recipe and a standard recipe in this queue. And already we can see down here we have so many issues. We have a lot of extra columns here that would not exist if we had only standard recipes. And the Phaser columns and the standard columns are just interspersed, which makes finding anything really difficult. Time is money, and this slows me down. So I don't like it. I don't want it. You need the most streamlined workflow you can possibly get, and this is not it. Another problem with it, if we go and we have 2 Phaser recipes or more in here, and we filter by name, it's going to split them up, which is stupid, because if you're filtering by name, 1 and 1 should go next to each other, and 3 should come after, but I don't know how it's doing that. Whatever it's doing, this is really bad, because now I can't really see what's going on here. My Phaser recipes are split up, and that's just an awful mess. I don't like that. Those are both reasons not to use Phaser recipes in queues all by themselves. The other reason is from a workflow perspective. Let's say you have a phasor recipe that you've created and you've applied a matrix data to tell it how to run the effect. Like maybe you have a shuffle and it's running shuffled, right? But you want it to fade in from left to right. You can't do that in the same recipe line. What you have to do in order to achieve that is have your phasor matrix data in your recipe or your preset somewhere else, and then take that preset into a standard recipe and put your fade data in the matrix there. Because otherwise it's just going to use your phasor matrix to do the fade as well, and that wouldn't be the look that you're going for. Based on all of that, my plan going forward is to make the phasors that I need to be the old way, make the ones that I need to be recipes, but store all of them in my presets, and then only store standard recipes in my queues. Since we're here, I will also mention a couple things about using recipes in sequences with the new update. We have these buttons right here that will let you add a standard recipe or phasor recipe right here. Of course, we have a minus, and we have cut, copy, and paste, which is great. Now, this button right here is going to open up another view for us, and this is great except for one thing. Where's my MAtricks? So the problem that I have here is you can't click. It says illegal object. Anytime you try to click on any of these fields, you cannot change them. You have to either change them here, which you can do, or you can click and drag, but you can't, you can also do plus minus, but you can't click on it to open it up. And I'm guessing this is just a bug. It's something misaddressed somewhere in the system, but that's kind of annoying. That's just how it is. One of the things that happens when you get a new release. It's fine. And that is the case for both standard recipes and phasor recipes. So it's a cool button, but it's going to be easier to just change it in the columns anyway. Okay, you've made it to the end. This is some of what I have picked up on using phasor recipes in the new version, and yes, I'm still excited about this update, but I do feel like we have some more improvements left to go, and I'm really hoping they come out in the next release. I just desperately want Speedmaster in phasor recipes. I don't know why we don't have that, but once that comes out, I'm going to be thrilled. I'm going to make another video very soon talking about template recipes and how you can make different types of recipes, use recipes in different ways, what the pros and cons are of each way. I'm super excited about that video, so if you're interested in watching that, make sure you're subscribed to my channel so that you will see it. I will see you in the next video, but until then, have a great week and happy programming.